Good morning. My name is Jeff Maris, and I am your service leader this morning. I'm joined by Jeremy Johnzik on audiovisual, and our guest speaker, Pastor Langdon Buddy Hubbard. For those who don't know Pastor Hubbard, he served as the pastor of First Presbyterian Church in East Aurora for nearly 21 years, from 2001 to 2022. Previously, he served churches in Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Chicago, New Brunswick, New Jersey, Salisbury, North Carolina, and Leicester, North Carolina. He is also a pianist and guitarist, and he will be providing the music for today's service. So if you could please welcome Pastor Hubbard. Welcome all members, friends, and visitors to UU of East Aurora. We are a community in which all people are welcome, regardless of belief, ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, or economic standing. Welcome to a safe space. Are there any announcements?
Yes.
Tara, you're up first.
Let's get this off because I'm not able to reach this properly. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to have so many people here today. I just wanted to reintroduce myself because there's a lot of new faces, and I just wanted to make sure that it was clear what my role is and who I am. So I am Tara Strayed. I am a fourth grade teacher in Buffalo. I was, over the summer, asked to step into the membership coordinator role, so I am in charge of assisting with gathering information, which I am asking, if you are not on my list virtually, my new updated contact list, that you see me after service, if you're interested, especially in getting email updates so that you can stay in tune with what all the activities and events are in the coming months. And I am super willing to chat about whatever you want to chat about. I'm pretty friendly and social, but I'm still pretty new at this. So if I've met you before and I don't remember your name, or if you've been here forever, I have not, so I might not know that. So I'd probably still ask you for your first and last name and your email. Okay, so in terms of announcements, next week we will start coffee hour, because this week we're doing our picnic. So and it's not really picnic weather, but we're gonna roll with it. So next week at 10:30 coffee hour will start. We had Helen Schneider volunteer for the 18th next week. I'm still looking for a volunteer for September 25th to bring something to snack on with the coffee for coffee hour. So if you are interested, we do have a good number of vegans, and be mindful of allergies. So if you could see me, I will write that down and let Mary know. In terms of next week also, Welcoming versus Othering is a class that I'm hosting with Rebecca Whiteman. Essentially, it's focusing on ensuring that everyone understands how to build these foundational relationships, especially with new faces coming into this safe space in this community. And the way that we do that is being mindful about our language and our body language and our speech, and ensuring that we're asking the right questions that make people want to come back and they make them feel comfortable and safe and welcome. And so this is really just a practice and an open discussion about that. So if you are interested, again, if you could see me after service, I just want to get a head count of how many people would want to stay after. It will be here. It won't max past 40 minutes. And then that's all the announcements I have. Does anyone else have any announcements? Okay.
We'll go with Jeanette and then Keith.
Okay.
Good morning. Okay, big announcement. Election day this year, I think you know when it is, November 8th. And I invite you to join us in what could be a really decisive initiative. The Unitarian Universalist Association is participating in a letter writing campaign to get out the vote. It's just getting out the vote, just as we did 2 years ago. UUA President Susan Frederick Ray said, speaking at a virtual event in April, a commitment to democracy is central to our faith tradition. and it is also central to our society. We have an obligation to raise our voices and act on our values to strengthen democracy. Our own UUEA has long been committed to the 7 principles of the UUA, including the 5th principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large. And we voted in favor of adding an 8th principle in which we commit to building a diverse, multicultural community and to dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. The Reverend Ashley Horan, Organizing Strategy Director for the UU Association, said, "There is so much at stake in the 22 elections, ballot initiatives across the country that will have long-term implications for reproductive justice, voting rights, direct democracy, labor rights, education, healthcare, LGBTQ1A+, gender environmental rights, and more." But just as important as UUA and the UUEA is you and me. Our own innermost convictions to be, as Eldridge Cleaver said, not part of the problem, but part of the solution. So join us in writing letters to reluctant voters in Georgia and other states. All you need to do is add your own 1 to 3 heartfelt sentences to a form letter, then address and stamp the envelopes. Catherine and I will provide directions, names, addresses, and most of what you need, unless you choose to buy stamps, envelopes, or print your own letters. As of today, we have about 8 weeks to make an impact, so please sign up. I have a sheet that I'll carry with me, and I'll pass it after the service. And print your name and how many letters in multiples of 5 you wish to write. They're really easy. They take about a minute or a minute and a half each one. Now's the perfect time to start. We have a real chance to swing the pendulum towards justice. Vote Forward's initiative, The Big Send, has a 10 million letter goal ahead of the mail date October 29th. And I know we can do it if we work together. And this is the sign-up sheet, real easy. Just your name and how many you want, and we'll bring the letters here. Okay, I'm sorry, Jeff, I have a second announcement.
It's fine.
I'm working on just a paper directory, plain old paper directory, for the time being, and I want you to please edit any of your, take a look at it. I'll have it around with me, and I'll set it out in the meeting room afterwards, and make sure your information is right so that we can all communicate with one another easily. Okay, and I'll try to get these printed up as soon as I can, but your information is vital. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeanette. Keith.
Hiya. This is a little bit out of left field, but most of you know I'm an aerospace engineer who works at Moog, and the worlds of aerospace engineering and social justice don't necessarily interact that often, but they will this week because we have monthly dinners of the Niagara Frontier Aero Club and American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. So we have these monthly dinners that talk about an aerospace topic, which is usually a plane or a space mission or something like that. But this Friday, we have a special talk which is given by Dr. Dan Hallman, who's the world's expert and wrote a book about the Tuskegee Airmen. And if you don't know about the Tuskegee Airmen, they were an all-black fighter squadron unit that was put together during World War II and performed to great decoration and admirably in the European theater, flying P-51s and P-47s. A couple of those planes were built actually at the Curtiss plant in Buffalo, so there's that connection too. So anyway, we've got Dr. Hallman giving a talk. It's this Friday and there's a dinner. It's at the Risotto restaurant in Amherst, which is really good. It's $30. It just this minute occurred to me to announce it here, but if anybody is interested in hearing about the Tuskegee Airmen and a little bit of aviation history as well, send me an email or talk to me after the service, and I can give you the flyer and give you the details. It's $30 a person, $20 for a student, and it comes with dinner at Risotto. Thanks.
Thanks, Keith. So in reference to the barbecue that Tara mentioned a few minutes ago, I knew that the weather was iffy for today, but I hoped that we would we would prevail. So I'm driving over here and it's raining, and I thought, you know, you didn't put the grill inside. So what we are going to do, we're still going to have the potluck and coffee hour. We're just going to move the barbecue up a few weeks. Everything's in the freezer, so we're not going to lose meats. There is a open pack of hot dogs that's thawed. So if you need dinner tonight and you want to take the hot dogs, they're in the refrigerator. And, you know, the buns aren't going to last until the next date either. So if you want to take the hot dog buns, they're yours as well. Are there any other announcements? If not, please stand in body or spirit and greet your neighbors. And now Pastor Hubbard will play the prelude.
Play and sing. Give thanks to the Lord our God and King. His love endures forever. For God is good and is above all things. His love endures forever. Sing praise, sing praise. With a mighty hand and outstretched arm, God's love endures forever. For the life that's been reborn, God's love endures forever. Sing praise, sing praise, sing praise, sing praise. Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong. Forever God is with us, forever, forever. From the rising to the setting sun, God's love endures forever. By the grace of God we will carry on. God's love endures forever. Sing praise, sing praise, sing praise, sing praise. Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever and ever. Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever, forever.
Now please join me, excuse me, in the chalice lighting printed in your order of service. Oops, over here. Over here. Wow, too much stuff. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. And now please join me in singing the opening hymn, O Come, You Longing Thirsty Souls, number 209. Spend yourself on empty air, why not be satisfied? For everywhere a feast is spread, that's always at our side. For as the rain and snow above fall not in vanity, but for this purpose water shall the word of Spirit serve as seed within our mold, that we may bear so rich a yield as brings the harvest home. For we
song, trees will clap in time. No more shall thorns and nettles grow. The bay tree and the pine shall find for us the eternal name that makes the world a shrine.
The work of our church is supported by the gifts of its members and friends. In lieu of the passing of the plates are available in the back of the sanctuary. And now Pastor Buddy will perform I Will Follow as the offering. And one note, there will be, this is not in your order of service, but there will be a children's message immediately following the offertory.
Where you go, I'll go. Where you say, I'll stay. Hang on, I gotta get my key right. This is a hard one. It starts on one note. Here we go, let's get this right. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow. All your ways are good, all your ways are sure. I will trust in you alone, higher than my sight, high above my life. I will trust in you alone. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Who you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. In you there's life everlasting. In you there's freedom for my soul. In you there's joy, unending joy. And I will follow. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Who you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Who you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. I will follow you. Follow you. I will follow you.
Now, if the children would like to come forward for the children's message. All right. Hi. You're going to sit, whoops, watch out for the cord. Pull your foot back, and you're going to go right out front.
Children, where should we go?
Right out front here is good.
Here's good. Yeah, come on up. Come on up.
You want to head over here?
I met all the children, I think most
Yep,
of them
right over
when
here.
I came in.
Or you can sit in the front row.
Yeah, whichever you want to do, sit on the floor, whatever.
Or on the floor, yep.
Yeah, wherever you're comfortable. There's plenty of seats. There's room up here, there's lots of room. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Now, how many of you been here to church, to the church here before, ever before? Okay. Guess what? I've never been here on a Sunday morning because I was preaching down the road like a mile away for 20-some years, having children's messages and things like that every Sunday until February when I retired. And the one thing I miss the most is, guess what? The kids, the children. Yeah, I love children. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter and a 1-year-old grandson. and took them to a block party yesterday on our street. And we had so much fun because I wanted them to just be on our street, even though they live somewhere else. But you know what I was worried about when I took them? What do you think I might have been worried about when I brought my grandchildren to my street that we didn't live on? What do you think? Maybe noisy or do you know what I was worried about? What do you think I might have been worried about? What do you think? They wouldn't know anybody, that's right. And maybe
They would not know any.
they wouldn't know anybody and they might be alone, right?
Yeah.
And maybe no one would say, "Hi, my name is Buddy. You want to play?" Right? Have you ever been any place where you didn't know anybody and people weren't friendly? And you felt kind of like, well,
Yes.
sad?
Middle school.
In middle school? Or in your school?
Yeah, and there's some bullies
There's some bullies, right?
which be mean to you.
Exactly. There are bullies sometimes. And here's the thing. What I was really happy with yesterday, guess what? All the children said, "Hi, let's play," and welcome my grandchildren to be a part of it. And we were there for hours. In fact, it was, well, I finally knew it was time to go home when my 1-year-old grandson walked down the street that was blocked off and was heading to our house to go to bed. It was getting dark and he knew it was bedtime, so we went. You know, do you see my tie? I love this tie. Let me show you my tie. I wore it especially for today because my message today. I'm going to ask you about this tie real quick. See? This is, by the way, a totally impromptu message because we planned this, but I'm always going to forget. Do you know what I love about this tie? What do you think I might learn about this tie? What do you think? What do you think?
That there's children on it.
There's children on it. That's right. Anything else?
And it's dark blue. I can't see.
Oh, it's dark blue background. That's it. I do like blue. What else do you think I like about it? Yes? How about the children on it?
They are holding hands.
They're holding hands
And they're smiling.
and they're smiling
And they're standing.
and they're standing. That's right. And anything else? Do they look different from each other?
They look different.
They look different. Yeah.
Everybody can be different sometimes.
Everybody can be different sometimes. And you know what? Can we like each other and play and be friends?
Yeah.
Even if we look different and act different? And even if we can't stand, some people are in wheelchairs, right? And they can't stand, but we still can hold hands.
Except babies can.
That's right. And you know, some people don't have hands even to hold. I have friends like that.
But 0-year-olds cannot stand anymore.
That's right. Not yet. They have to learn how to. You're right. What I love about the tie is there's people out here can't see. There are Asian children and Hispanic Latino children and African children, African American and white children. There's all different kinds of children. And they're holding hands and they're happy and they're smiling. And you know what I think? I think that's the way the world should look like, don't you? I think
Some
so.
people can be bald.
That's right.
Some people can have hair.
That's right. That's right. Some of us are bald, right? Yeah, that's right. Thank you for acknowledging that. Yes. So children, I just want you to know, in the early days of school, yeah, sometimes there will be people who aren't really nice. Some children aren't really nice. But I have a feeling most children are really nice to each other, right? Isn't that true? Remember that. And I want you to be one of those children who are really nice to each other. And put out a hand and say, let's be friends, let's play. That will make a beautiful world.
Let's play.
Let's be friends, let's play. You've got it. Thank you so much for coming up today. I love the children. You all are so great. You really are. And I hope you have a wonderful time in school. You have a little way to go yet, okay? It's okay. So you can go back to your seats now. All right, thank you.
Is this thing on?
Yes, it is. Please turn to page 466 in your hymnal and join me in the responsive reading titled Religion. Let religion be to us life and joy.
Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have
Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and right.
Let it be a sorrow that opens for us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity.
Let religion be to us the wonder and allure of that which is only partially known and understood.
An eye that glories in nature's majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and courage.
Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders.
Let it be to us hope and purpose, and the discovering of opportunities to express our best through daily tests.
Religion, uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere.
Holding before our eyes the prospect of a better life for humankind, which each may help to make happen.
I do want to note that we are going to run over today. There's just no way around it, and that is not a request to you to edit your talk in any way. But I do just want to say, if you need to leave, it's completely understandable, because we'll probably be about another half hour. And now again, welcome Pastor Hubbard with today's message.
It is really good to be here, and with folks on Zoom also. We're glad that you're with us. Thank you. And joining with us in this time. Being here on September 11th, my mind goes back. It was my first couple months in East Aurora at the First Presbyterian Church when 9/11 took place, and it was a really difficult and painful way to begin my ministry. And here we are, all these years later, and 21. And it necessitates somehow to address in many ways those things. We still need to address the world we live in, and that we're not only not so much different from then, in some ways it feels domestically that we live in more terror than ever, domestically as well as globally. I think as I prepare to share some words this morning, one thing is for children. The opening part of the sermon is a childhood story. So I hope the kids will really open up and listen, especially because it'll be about when I was a child. But what I want to put forward to you is this. On 9/11 is something that Henry Nouwen, a Catholic priest, had spoken about and written about that I always loved. And he said, so much of our world and so many of us live in a house of fear. And the call to us is to move out of the house of fear into a house of love. Fear is the heart, Henry Nouwen said, of hate and of terror. And love is the heart and source of freedom and life and joy and unity and harmony and hope. And so my call to you, and when we look at things today of race, but also of the terrorism in our world, it really is a call for us to make a choice to move out of the house of our fears, whatever they may be, into the house of love, where we'll all be free and family, and the doors are wide open for all to live in the house of love. And so it is good to be with you. And as I share some thoughts today, when I was a young child, about 4 or 5 years old, it's hard to know exactly when this began, but my family would go to see my grandparents in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We lived in Greensboro, well, first in Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia, and then in North Carolina. And whenever we would go to visit my grandparents, my sister and I would go down the street, down the hill to Rowan Park, which was a playground. And it was a typical playground with swings and slides and a swimming pool, actually. And it also had this huge cement blue painted whale for climbing on. I imagine you'd never find a playground with that anymore because it was really dangerous. It was terribly dangerous. But we loved to go and had so much fun. Now, the thing was, there was another aspect to this park that set it apart from any park I think that there has ever been in the world ever. Because there was in the center of the park an iconic image of something that took us back to the past. Something to a world very different from what a little white boy and a little white girl lived in. In the center of this park was not a monument or a memorial, but a man who lived in the middle of the park, surrounded by a fence and living in a lean-to with a wool blanket as his door, with goats in his fenced yard. And he was the blackest man I had ever seen in my life. And his name was Moses King. I was about 4 years old in 1960. Moses King was born in 1860. He was about 100 years old when I was 4. I probably had met him when I was 2 or 3, but I don't remember that. I just remember from 4 and 5 on. I asked my sister once if she remembered Moses King, and she said, oh, she knew who he was, but she didn't know him. And I thought that was odd, and I said, why didn't you know him? And she said, well, little white girls didn't talk to black men. So I stood on the top of the hill and let you go down to see Moses King, watching you to make sure you're okay, and then you'd come back and we'd go and swing and play. He was a poor soul by earthly measures, living in that little lean-to, the wool blanket, in that impoverished sort of situation. He hung milk cartons in the tree. Nobody knew why. And then when my aunt told me one of her teacher friends, my aunt was a teacher, asked Moses King, because adults used to talk to him too, why do you hang milk cartons in the tree? He said warily and sternly and tersely, I won't ask you how you teach, and you won't ask me how I live. Moses King liked children a lot better than adults. And all the children flocked to Moses King. Born in slavery. Isn't that hard to believe? I knew a former slave as a little child. He loved children, as I said, and he enjoyed engaging in conversations with us, but especially about matters of faith. Whenever he went to see Moses King, and I remember this from the time I was 6 or 7 and had learned a little bit about how to read finally, he would hand you his Bible, a well-worn Bible, and say, turn somewhere. And you turn somewhere like Psalm 121 in the Bible. And then he said, where are you? And I'd say, Psalm 121. He says, how does it start? And I'd say, I lift up my eyes, and then he'd break in. I lift up mine eyes unto the hills from whence my help comes. My help comes from the Lord who made the heavens and the earth. And I knew I had found the author of the Bible that day. That old black man knew the Bible through and through. And you know, every time I visited him, it was the same story. Here, take my Bible, turn somewhere. It was a test to see how his memory at 100 was, but also to us. That to find that this man was an icon truly in the city of Fayetteville and in our lives. When I was around 9 years old, Moses King got sick and had to go to the hospital. He wasn't doing well at all, because by this time he was 105. And the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina, get this, gave him a house. He was such an icon in Fayetteville that they gave him a house, and he went to live in it, but he was not happy because it wasn't his lean-to, and he missed that, and he missed the goats, and he missed the children, and he died. More than a decade later, I was going to Princeton Theological Seminary, and my dad said, hey, look up a guy named Fred Rose. He's the son of one of my friends from Fayetteville, and he's going to seminary too. He's ahead of you by a year. So I looked up Fred, and I always loved her name, Fred and Georgia Rose. Oh, so lyrical. Great couple. Love them very much. And they asked us over for dinner, so we had some spaghetti. And after a little bit of conversation, I said, Fred, I got to ask you something. You grew up in Fayetteville. He said, yeah. I said, okay, I got this memory from a long time ago. Did you know a man named Moses King when you were there and growing up? And he says, well, yes, I did. Everybody knew Moses King. I said, okay, so it's not a figment of my imagination. Oh, no. I said, okay, I got another question. Did he know the Bible really well? And Fred said, word for word, he knew the whole thing. And I said, so that wasn't my childhood imagination. He was real. And Fred said, oh, he was real. Very real indeed. I loved Moses King. I couldn't wait to go to Fayetteville to see my grandparents, but as soon as I got there, I ran down to the park to see my friend. He was my first black friend, and my only black friend for decades, really. That picture stays with me in my mind's eye of a tiny little white Southern boy having deep conversations about God and faith and life with an old black man who was born in slavery until his family, his folks were freed when he was 5. I've often said that Moses King was the father of my faith, the person who inspired faith in God in me, who loved God deeply and captivated me with the possibility that I could know God just as much as this man. And I wanted to know something deeper about the mysteries of life that he certainly knew. Many years later, when I was in my 40s, I looked at Moses King's obituary just to make sure my memories from seminary when I was 20 were real too, with Fred Rose. And I discovered in his obituary that he indeed was born in 1860 and died at 105, like I remembered, when I was 9 years old. And that he was considered a nurse in the African American community there, taking care of the sick. And he was superstitious. He wouldn't ride in a car at all, but when he went to get groceries, a friend would come in a horse-drawn wagon to take him. And I remembered that, seeing him on the horizon, riding in the wagon. And I was so disappointed when I would miss him when he was gone. The thing is, the article said this, and this is what stunned me maybe more than anything, that many of the children who knew Moses King became ministers, like Fred Rose and Buddy Hubbard and dozens more. Isn't that amazing, the impact of a slave's life on little white boys and not girls because they couldn't go see him? It's huge. That connection, it's not so long ago, is it, that we could know folks who were born in slavery. Moses King lies at the heart of my faith and my racial memory. I imagine some of you I know are familiar with Howard Thurman. Who knows Howard Thurman? Anybody remember him? I'm not sure if you've read him. You got to read him. He went to Colgate Rochester Divinity School back in the 20s or so as a seminarian, and his papers were there. I don't know where they are now since Colgate Rochester School has kind of moved at this point. But he was an African-American pastor, poet, and mystic who inspired Martin Luther King Jr. in the civil rights movement. I am convinced after reading over 20 of his books that he was really the full inspiration of nonviolent movement in America in the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King carried one of his books, Jesus and the Dispossessed, with him always in his briefcase, read it constantly. But nobody knew Howard Thurman. He was just a preacher in a church. But he wrote about racial memory a lot. Those parts of our minds and souls that stir in the deepest places of our being and form us, our ways of thinking, acting, and being. Unconscious, they can become debilitating and destructive. But when we do the work of racial memory consciously, We are enabled to confront our deepest prejudices and racism and journey to a place of freedom which opens the door to new ways of thinking and living and the possibility of new and renewed relationships across racial and cultural boundaries. This is the work that makes racial reconciliation and racial justice possible. It's important to know that this work of racial memory is not simply a personal journey, but it's a communal journey. Because racism, as I know you know, because I've read and we've been a part of the sign issue and all those things, is not simply a matter of personal feelings and attitudes and behaviors. It is systematic and it is structural and it is a part of why we become racist in America anyway, because it's a part of the air we breathe and our government and churches and everything in our schools. Until we come to grips with our racial memory as individuals, but also as a nation. As Jim Wallace, preacher in Washington and leader of Sojourners Community for many years, said, racism is America's original sin. It goes way back to the founding. And we still live it. And we have to confront it, not only as individuals, but as structures. I would go on from those early times in my life to grapple with my own racism, peeling away layer after layer. Anybody ever been through that before? If you haven't, I highly encourage it. It's extremely painful, but it's necessary. Born in Washington, D.C., and living at first in Northern Virginia, and then Greensboro, North Carolina, my life was formed by the Confederacy. My family were daughters of the American Revolution and the daughters of the Confederacy. The expectation is that our family would carry on those bold and brave traditions, flags and all. And by the way, those who say the Confederate flag is just a symbol of, of the South and history. No, it's racist through and through. And this is a Southerner telling you, don't let anybody tell you different. I find Northerners saying that, and I'm offended by that. I remember, though, my parents were actually quite progressive for Southerners. I came home one day as a probably 7-year-old because I was starting to read, but I found a word written on the sidewalk in chalk that I'd never seen before. And I came to my mom and I, very excited, Mom, I found a new word. I don't know what it is. She said, well, can you spell it for me? Yeah, it's N-I-G-G. Stop right there. And I was stunned. I thought she'd be proud of me. She said, that is a nasty, dirty word that people use about, she said, colored people, black people. And we don't use it. And I don't want to ever hear you say that word. Looking back on my mom, I was really proud of who she was trying to be as a Southerner. By the way, racism is north too, not just south, so don't want to give that away. There would be other messages of racism, though, in my family, and my neighbors, and my friends. Things that were despicable and degrading toward black people that I was going to mention some and I decided I don't want to because they're just too nasty and I don't want to put any more nastiness into the airwaves anywhere. But you know what they are. They formed me in my way of thinking about black people, in spite of my good old friend Moses King. But that wasn't the only thing that formed me growing up in the South. I was also formed by the efforts of racial justice and those who struggled for it. I would grow up during the Civil Rights Movement, sitting frequently at the Woolworth's counter in Greensboro, the famous one, where the sit-ins took place. We moved there 3 years after those sit-ins. I sat at the counter nonplussed, not knowing that it was pretty amazing that black people and white people were sitting together, having a Coca-Cola and eating French fries together. That's just the way it was now in my world. Looking back, I'm amazed at what had happened in that place just before I got there. I at least knew the result of it. I would get caught in the middle of a riot one day in downtown Greensboro after eating at Woolworth's as we shopped. And Jesse Jackson was an iconic figure in Greensboro. He's a student at A&T State University when I was growing up, and he led marches from the college down to the high school, to the middle school, to the elementary school, until the mayor finally just shut the city down and said, nobody marches, everybody stay home. I knew something was up, didn't understand it all. My sister and her friends were advocates for racial justice. She even introduced me to some of her black friends. One I didn't get introduced to, but became one of my coaches in a basketball camp in North Carolina. A little while later, it was Bob McAdoo. Anybody ever hear Bob McAdoo? I played basketball with Bob McAdoo. I was really little, he was really big, and he was no fun to play with. But he was a good coach. She was really good friends with him. She was the yearbook editor, and she took his picture a million times as a star at Greensboro Ben L. Smith High School, where she went. I was saddened by all the killings of our time, of President John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. It broke my young heart, all of it. But I was also entranced by King's dream, especially the part when he said, I have a dream that one day the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will sit down at the table of brotherhood. You see, that struck a chord in this young white boy's soul, because my family, like most Southerners embedded deep in the South, owned slaves, and I still have the documents to prove it. Not something to be proud of, but reality nonetheless. And it began to be my dream. I was the son of former slave owners. Moses King was a former slave. He and I sat together, talked about God together. Can't that dream live again? But I didn't know now, as I was emerging into high school and college, into seminary, how do you break down the walls? Because I still lived in an all-white world. And then one day, in my early days of ministry in North Carolina, I heard John Perkins, an African-American minister and community organizer, lead a workshop on racism in Brevard, North Carolina. And when he was done, a white woman said, I'm so frustrated. I don't know what to do. I'm a middle-aged white woman. I don't know how to break down the walls. I don't know where to start because racism is just too big and too hard. And I'll never forget his response. Oh, it's simple, really. Just make one black friend. And they'll introduce you to their black friends. And before you know it, you'll be making a difference together, tearing down the walls of racism. You know where to start. It was only a year or so later, my wife and I left our mostly white world behind and moved into a black community, an emerging black community. It was racially mixed then, to begin a mission called the Northeast Community Mission, to work on breaking down the walls of racism, to build bridges, to work on issues of poverty and hunger, and just make some more black friends and see where God and the universe would take us from there. For the next 17 years, Jan and I lived and worked in multiracial, multicultural communities and churches and ministries. It was our passion. And then we came to East Aurora. Mostly white East Aurora. And I was scared of white people. I told God, I prayed, I said, I don't know how to minister to white people anymore. I'm really nervous about going to East Aurora. And I said, but I'll go if you help me to get the folks in my church out of East Aurora and into the city of Buffalo and beyond, and to build relationships across racial lines. I'll go if that's what you want me to do. And I went. And that's exactly what I started doing. And Jim Coder knows. Started doing mission trips around the world, around the country, to people of different cultures, African American, and Native American, Hispanic, Latino, low-income white folks, and took John and Andrew with several of those mission trips. And by the way, John and Andrew Coder are two of my favorite people in the whole world in the Coder family. And you know, it's what kept me going a lot of the time, knowing that we were doing something good and making a difference in the world. I retired last February and wondered where we would go to church now that we had no church home anymore. You can't go back to your old church when you leave in the Presbyterian church. And we wandered, went here and there, and it was good. We found lots of really great churches. And then the top shooting took place. And Jan and I knew we needed to be there for the prayer vigil the very next day across the street from Tops. And we went. And then we drove a mile north from there in Buffalo to Lincoln Memorial United Methodist Church. We knew the pastor, hadn't seen him in a while, had never been to the church. Went to worship and loved it. Our little granddaughter Zoe, who was just 4 at the time, and she's still 4, but just turned 4, went, made friends instantly, and was running around the church with all the African-American little girls, because it's an African-American predominantly church. And when the service was over, Jan and I went to Pastor George and said, we've been praying a long time, really a year, for where we should go to church when we retired. And he said, quit praying. I thought, that's a funny thing for a preacher to say. Quit praying because you're here and we want you to stay. And we did. We're now members of Lincoln Memorial United Methodist Church, a part of Pastor George's dream of building a multicultural, multiracial church to be an image of a new way of living, a new way of being together. And we love it thoroughly. He told us not long after we started going that he wanted us to follow our passions and do whatever we believed God was calling us to do in that place. And then he texted us and said, hey, I want to start having pastoral team meetings every other week and want you and Jan to be a part of them. So we are part of his team to try to break down some barriers and build a new world together. For starters, we believe God has called us to sink our roots in the African American community again, to make just one more black friend and get started again breaking down the walls of racism. But you know, it's all of our work as white people in America. You don't have to go and join an African American church, but the call is to be involved, even so simply as making new relationships and being a part of breaking down the institutions, the structures that are there, to name them, to call them out. And when people speak in ways other than is good and everything that you believe as a church, you name it, you say it, and then you take the repercussions of your boldness and saying, no, like my mother did, I don't want to ever hear it again. Don't ever say that again. It's a different world we have to live. And it will only happen as if we, white Americans, will do what we need to do to make it right. We can't wait for someone else to do it. It's our work and the work of our souls to do the work of racial memory. And it's as easy as making just one black friend and seeing where it will take us next in building that world that we dream with Martin Luther King and so many others of a world where love and justice reign. Moving out of the house of fear and all of us into the house of love. Amen.
I am going to skip the reading of the history of the water service because it's a fairly lengthy little sermonette. I think most of us here know and appreciate the symbolism of the water ceremony. I will send this out to the email distro if you're interested in reading it. If you're not on the email distribution list, please let me know and we'll get you added. I'll read the last part of it. Over 30 years after its creation, the water ritual speaks to a deepening awareness of our solidarity with brothers and sisters globally who lack the most basic and precious resources. It also speaks eloquently of our interdependent web of life. Now I ask you to come forward as you feel moved to add the water that you've brought today. If you did not bring water, there is also water here that you can symbolically add to the communal water. I can start things off by adding some water that I got from the creek that runs through Chestnut Ridge Park. Work was particularly stressful this summer, and I went there quite often because it's one of the few places where I feel completely relaxed and at peace. This water, by the way, I don't know how long it goes back, but there is a sample of it. Well, I've been going here since 2008, so 2009 would have been my first water ceremony. So there's water molecules in here that are at least 14, 15 years old. So I'm going to add the Chestnut Ridge water. I put a note on it reminding me not to drink it because it was in the refrigerator. And again, come forward as you feel led.
I'm just adding a little from this. Charlie and I didn't travel too much this summer, but it reminds me of how grateful I am that I can turn on the tap and have fresh water coming out. And it also reminds me, segueing from Reverend Buddy's talk, of the people in Jackson, Mississippi who do not have fresh water.
Yes.
And it is certainly a manifestation of our systemic racism. The capital of that state, which is mostly black, did not hear the voices of the people who live in that city, and their water system is completely defunct, and they have no idea when it's going to be up and running again. So when you turn on the tap and you have fresh water, be grateful and think of the people in Jackson.
Thank you, Judy. Hey, Bill.
Because of COVID and health situations in our family, Lori and I have not been able to travel much. So this summer was the first time that we were able to travel. So we went to Pittsburgh, where sports fans at museum. So we went to see a Yankees game, and Andy Warhol Museum, and a White Museum. So we had a great time. So the water symbolizes for us just a fresh start, a new beginning, something different as to what life may have been and what we enjoyed in the past.
Go ahead and pour it in there. Much as you want. Okay.
I just want to add one thing. The water was from the Monongahela, Allegheny, and the Ohio River.
My daughter Helen and I went hiking in the Adirondacks. So we get some water there. This water symbolizes the Charles River in Boston, which is next to where my daughter got her PhD this summer, after a long struggle. And she's gainfully employed at a startup in Boston, so it's a whole new life for all of us. And she's getting off our cell phone plan.
You probably want to put 2 gallons of water to appreciate that.
Well, this little bit of water represents, we had a traveling summer. I think after being stuck at home for 2 years, you know, we just let loose. So a little bit from the blue Danube, which is not a bit blue, a little bit from Boston Harbor, which is also not blue, and a little bit from the rivers in Colorado, which are cleaner, and a little bit from our own wonderful glen right next to our house.
Water from Buffalo Creek, where my vacation home, summer home. I retrieved it now from my deadbeat tenants, and there's a lot of work. They left it in deplorable condition, but it's really looking forward to taking it back over for my family. And my sons now are of an age where they want to spend time there instead of thinking, oh, it's so much work.
Water from my, fresh water from my dog's water bowl. My dog Blue. When you told me we were doing this, I was just thinking, and what kept coming to mind is that my dog, as our domestic pets, are totally dependent for water from us for life. And it just made me think how dependent we are on each other, on this creation, and the importance of sustainability. And so my dog reminds me that we're in this together, all of us. And it's Jackson, Mississippi. John Perkins, who I mentioned in my sermon that I've gotten to know and mentioned, that's where a lot of his ministry actually was. And I've done mission work with youth groups in Jackson. I know it well.
I've got water from B. Hunter Creek in Allegheny State Park. Just wanted to remind everybody, I guess, this water was fated originally to probably run from the Allegheny down to Ohio River, all the way through Mississippi River, all the way down to the Caribbean. Now I'm going to pour it in here, and it's going to be fated to run through eventually through the Erie, to the Erie Lake watershed, through over Niagara Falls and up through the St. Lawrence Seaway. So I just want to apologize to the water. It's going to go in the cold North Atlantic.
Well, we had a friend visit. We didn't go anywhere, but we had a friend visit a few weeks ago. We did the ultimate touristy thing that we hadn't done in 20 years, and that was go on the Maid of the Mist boat from Niagara Falls. There's a lot of water there.
I don't know if you remember or know that I was born in San Jose, and it's north of some of the most fertile areas in the world. And this is water from from Napa Valley and from the San Fernando Valley and all the places that have and grow a lot of our fruits and vegetables. There is none.
Come on down.
So this water is symbolic of the water at Jekyll Island off the coast, where we have been able to go for over 50 years. And it's been a source for me since I was a kid of re-energizing and restoring. It's been a place of peace and a place of serenity. And for 3 years, we weren't able to go there. Or we chose not to go there, I should say. So just a few months ago, we were able to go and spent many weeks. It was about, I want to pour a little bit more water. It was about 20 years ago that we were at Jekyll Island, and I got a call from our friends Judy and Russ Hughes. And they had been traveling in Florida, and they were looking for a property where they could go when Judy retired and spend the winter months in a place that had golf and tennis, which were their two primary interests. And they were unsuccessful at that, but they knew that they would be passing by us on the way home, so they wondered if they could stop by. And they did. And they decided to spend the night. And we took them on a tour of Jekyll, and the next day they bought a house about only a few blocks from us. And so this water actually also is from a place that was very, very special to Russ, and still will be to Jude.
The ritual of the chalice of communion wine was a privilege reserved for men who had been ordained as priests. For many people, however, rituals are concrete and meaningful expressions of joy and sorrow. As Unitarian Universalists, we are free to create rituals and to celebrate life passages in ways we feel express our values and our faith. The water service provides one way to celebrate the return to community after a summer's pause. Now please join me as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now the closing words, All Rivers Run to the Sea, written by Kayla Rice. It starts with a drop, then a trickle, a burble, a rush of water bubbling toward its destination, and finally the wide, endless sea. All rivers run to the sea. Today you brought water, poured it into a common bowl. Though our experiences have differed, these waters mingle, signifying our common humanity. Today you came and shared in this sacred community. May you depart this sacred space, hearts filled with hope for new beginnings, a fresh start. Go forth, but return to this community where rivers of tears may be shed, where dry souls are watered, where your joy bubbles, where your life cup overflows, where deep in your spirit you have found in this place a home. All rivers run to the sea.
Mending with a postlude. I'm not a professional pianist, guitarist. I just have fun with it. So if I can avoid the piano, I do. And I'm going to right now by doing a postlude of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Is that in your hymnal at all?
Is it? Okay. Let's see.
Here. While he's getting that, Jeff is getting that, how many watched the Buffalo Bills game? Okay, of course. And at the beginning of the game, before the game started, before the national anthem, there was, I don't remember the singer, but she sang Lift Every Voice and Sing. I don't know if you know. Yeah.
Grab this one and see if it's in this
Okay.
one.
And it was written by James Weldon Johnson, and is considered the national anthem of the African American community often. And if you ever go to black churches, you'll often hear it sung. And do you have it?
Number 149 in your hymnal.
Is this one?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to turn there so I have the same words. I can't play it, so we'll do it a cappella. There you go. There we go. Let me see if I get a good key for us. Okay, let's go. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.